Good morning, everyone. Super duper excited to be here today and very grateful to be part of the Creative Mornings. And first of all, I just wanted to thank James, Kat, and Lean and Rhonda for giving me the opportunity to be here today and also the confidence to be here because I've never done anything like this before. So this is definitely something different from me. And so yeah, today I'm going to share with you my journey of how I became a chef. My name is Priyal. And so when initially when we started, can you guys hear me better now? Okay, so initially when we started discussing what are we gonna talk about, like with Kat, she brought me to a really good realization. So we said that, okay, so my life is not, like I didn't design my life the way it was supposed to be, but it unraveled beautifully because of design. And I wanted to take you through my journey of my journey so far as a chef and how I came to be here today. Okay, so initially I had never ever imagined myself to be in this career path. I've always been a very creative person, but I never thought of myself to be a chef. So initially, like I always loved like art and design technology in school, and I always pursued that. And before I went to college, the reason why I went to Parsons was because it was the only place which offered a degree which was both design and business at the same time. And I loved both of those things. And at that time, it was the only college which provided such a degree. So I initially went to Parsons in New York to study strategic design and management. And so at that time, like after that, I went into brand management, and I was working in FMCG corporate brands for 2 to 3 years. But I always felt like, my inkling was always towards like food, and I wanted to pursue something in the food space, but I didn't know how to professionally pursue it. So I finally thought like, okay, now I have to do it. Like I'm still able to, while I'm in the US, I want to go back and I want to go to culinary school and try to pursue this professionally. And so I went back to New York in 2017, and I went to the Natural Gourmet Institute, and I did a full chef training program there. And after that, I stayed back in New York for a while, and I worked in like 3 different restaurants, squeezed my time. Like, of course, like when you go to the US, like you're on a very tight timeline because they also want to send you out very soon. So I had like a very constrained timeline where I wanted to pack all the experiences I could because I grew up vegetarian, and New York City is a perfect place because there's so many different plant-based restaurants there. So I wanted to pack in all the experiences I could. So literally like from 6 in the morning till 12 in the night, 6 days a week, like back to back, I would rotate between 3 of those restaurants and pack in all the experiences I could while I was in New York, because I knew I had to come back very soon and I wanted to work in all the places I could. And so I came back to Dubai in 2018, and I was like, okay, so I'm like a plant-based chef, and at that time there weren't that many plant-based restaurants in Dubai. And so that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to start something on my own straight away. And that's when I created my brand, Dulce de Mirchi. And so that was how it started off. I started off with creating pop-up events. I started teaching classes to people in Dubai. And that's how my journey began in the space. So when you look at my food, so a lot of my food, so to give you a little bit of a background, I grew up in Thailand and Hong Kong. So a lot of the flavors and a lot of the dishes I create are inspired by that region. So like, of course, like a lot of people look at me and they're like, oh, she probably makes Indian food, of course. But of course I do make Indian food also. But actually for me, like Thai food and Indian food are equally staple food because I spent so much time growing up in Thailand. And so a lot of my flavors are inspired by that region. And so like for me, one of my main goals when creating these experiences and designing these experiences were to I wanted to change the stigma around plant-based food, because for a lot of people came to me and they're like, okay, plant-based food is not, or like vegetarian food or vegan food is not as exciting. And there was something I wanted to change that, and I wanted to create an experience so that when people left, they felt like, no, I went for like a vegan or vegetarian dinner, but it was really exciting. It's something very different to what I thought I would regularly have. And so that started becoming like my motivation around designing these experiences. So like, how do I design the experience from when I'm developing the menu all the way to when the diner comes, so that it's a very different experience, and it opens people's minds to a different type of cuisine or type of food, or a different lifestyle. So so when you look at my food, because I've grown up like in different places, and I'm originally from India, like I don't like to use the word fusion or but it comes to be like literally like a different melange of flavors from the different cities I've lived in, and my Indian background. So it's a play on like different flavors. And so when I'm planning like an experience for someone, like I think of everything from like the initial stage of like menu development, like how do I want the diner to feel when they're coming here, and think about like someone who regularly doesn't eat maybe like plant-based cuisine, what are they thinking about in their head? How can I change their notion through the colors I'm using, through like the way something is plated, through the moment they put something in their mouth, what are the different textures they're feeling, what are the different like aromas which are coming to them. So there's so many different things like I think about when I'm planning these menus. So this is just a picture of a supper club. So I don't know how familiar you guys are with supper clubs in Dubai. So when I came in 2018, I initially started doing this, and it was literally the best. It was literally the best thing ever, because it's a group of strangers coming together from different fields. Like this table specifically, I think it was like 9 people with like 12 different nationalities, and all from all fields of work. And it was so nice. Like everyone came together, and everyone was sharing like their different experiences. And also like coincidentally, everyone in this group, like no one was vegetarian. So it was very interesting, and it was a great dinner. So I thought that I would take you through an exciting design project which I did, and I thought that this would be the perfect example to share with all of you. So this was one of my friends from Parsons, she was in architecture, and when she also came back to India, and I was in India for a while as well, and she approached me and she was like, why don't we do something together? Like all her work has like a lot of like a playful take on it, and my food also has a playful take on it. She's like, this would be such a perfect collaboration if we did something together. And I was like, that sounds amazing. So initially we started with just both of us in the collaboration, and then slowly from 2 ladies we became like 6, 7 ladies, and we had more and more collaborators like joining us. So we had we had like different copywriters, we had an architect, we had a sommelier, we had who else did we have? We had someone who was making furniture. So we had all kinds of different people in this team, and it was super exciting. So we came up with this concept called stranger than familiar, and it was a very playful experience. It was a playful eating experience, as it says. And basically what we did is we took over a furniture store in Mumbai, and the furniture store was beautifully divided into different rooms within the furniture store. And we created a different experience within each of these rooms, which I'll take you through more in a while. And so, so this was I wanted to show you one of the planning processes we went through to design the experience. So we had like 6, 7 different rooms, and each room had like a different, let's say like a board game or like something like that. So this one was like a tic-tac-toe for one of the things. So initially how we did it, because my friend was in another city and I was in a different city. So we communicated through drawings and visuals, because that's how we would communicate our ideas together. So if you see on the top side is like we created our drawings and compiled them together, and we were like, okay, how are we going to execute this? So initially we drew, and like I was like, okay, this is the kind of food I want to make, and she's like, these are the kind of objects I have and the kind of board games I have, and how can we combine them together? So we did that first, and then the next stage was we had our graphic designer and copywriter to come and have like these playful terms. So the tic-tac-toe, for that one, she said, trade turns strangers into friends. And so we had, the next stage was like in Surat, where my friend Priyanka, her brand name is Out of the Shed, she was creating these wooden board games for the tic-tac-toe. So over here was the process of them creating the actual board game. And then I was here testing different matcha cookies and Earl Grey cookies for people to do the exchange. And finally, like you can see, like at the experience, we had people coming in, and I was very surprised, because honestly, like what I was speaking to someone earlier is that in India, people I felt were not as open to like these kind of experiences. And for us to ask them to come into a room, and we did not tell them this in advance. They showed up and we were like, hi guys, so now we're going to split you up from your friends. You're not going to be with your friends tonight. And we mixed everyone up, and basically the furniture store was 2 levels, and we had our copywriters basically become like these mini guides for the night, where they kind of like split everyone up. And it was someone's birthday, and she was like, oh, I really want to be with my husband. And we're like, unfortunately, not tonight. So we really took people out of their comfort zones. And so we all went into different, like the groups were divided, and everyone went into different rooms, and like, you know, we had like different wines paired with each of the games and the different foods. So there were many different things like to break the ice for people, and in that way it was really great. But it turned out to be a very like playful, successful event, because first of all, it was making people out of their comfort zone to what they were usually used to. And then we basically took them through different food experiences, where they were playing like different games, basically. So another really fun one was my friend Priyanka. Her specialty of her Out of the Shed is spinning tops. So how she initially started her brand was by making these really playful wooden spin tops. And so she was like, I really want to incorporate this in the food experience somehow. And I was wondering, okay, how are we going to do this? And then I was like, okay, we can have like an edible spin top. And if you see on the bottom there are these really playful spin pads. And so I was like, okay, I need to think of something which can go inside this, where people can be like, you know, kind of playing with their food while they're eating. So, here, beautifully, the copywriter has written, we loop and cycle into our habits. So we did, I made a mulberry beer popsicle. And so if you can see here, I went through a lot of testing to make it functioning, but it finally worked. So we put like, you know, literally like I took like a big box of dry ice and stuffed all these mulberry beer popsicles into this box. And one of the stations were literally a table of all these different spin pads. And we did like a combination of the edible ones and her traditional wooden spin pads. And we like used these spin pads to literally people were spinning their food on these pads. It was really fun. This was one of my favorite stations. It was a really good one. I'll just show you one more example of what we did. So this one was, we also had like a cheese board. And so this was the tree of associations evoke smiles. So she had like these lovely, like everything she does is made out of wood and brass. So we had a bunch of these little like trees where like they rotate and spin, and people could go and take out, you know, hook off their own like strawberries and cheese and whatever else there was there. So this was amazing as well. And the last one of the other ones we did was effortlessness is a childlike instinct. So she had made this platform, and I had put like these different cupcakes on it. So overall, it was like this was another example as well. so yeah, this was one of the projects which I had also, this a very fun project for us. And yeah, so this is what I had in mind to share. And that's all.
Very nice presentation.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it. And I just wanted to ask you, so you mentioned you're a vegetarian or vegan?
So I'm vegetarian. So I grew up in a vegetarian family. So I've actually been vegetarian my whole life. But primarily, like I would say, like 80% of the time, I don't consume dairy. But I do consume. I wouldn't say I'm vegan.
Is your food vegan or vegetarian?
So I do both.
Both.
I do both.
Okay.
But most of my supper clubs are vegan. So
Okay.
yeah.
I really enjoy the plant-based.
Yes, the majority of my food is vegan. There's just a few things which I do. So for some of my clients, which are vegetarian, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah. Yes. So I think like over time, like I've created more of a system to like, so one of the things which is very important to me is consistency. Like, for example, so what I do is like I plan, so there's like a lot of things like if you're talking about the supper club experience, which we saw a slide where there was a communal table. So usually how that works is like, I'll post on Instagram that these are the dates and then people will sign up for them. But I'm on my own right now. So I do everything from the back end to the cooking and then the execution. So it involves like a lot of stuff, including like, designing the actual menu and everything like that. So yes, it is a lot of operational work. I would say like, I enjoy the cooking part of it the most and the design part of it the most. But yes, operational, like over time, I've come up, like, things have become more easier, I would say, like in terms of like through practice, like I've figured out how to arrange it. But yes, there's a lot of operational, it's more of like getting the people to come and also in terms of, making sure that like, it's more of the payment and those kind of things, which I would say the operational things. But otherwise, I would say it's more of like, I'm quite used to the rest of the process now, but it's a lot. And I think over time, like I would like to have more people in and helping the thing. I don't know if that answers your question.
I guess I could design your own system as well to make sure that.
Exactly. So it's easier for like, yeah, I feel like it's like the same kind of routine, like in terms of like, planning, like, like the grocery shopping and the inviting the people, making sure that they've got the location, all of those things. And of course, actually like setting up the actual ambience like for the night and everything. But other than that, like I feel like the bulk of the work goes in designing the menu and executing it. But there definitely is like a big part of the operations as well. Yeah.
Question from Zoom. Tanvi, would love to know what you think your next steps will be. What do you think your next adventure will look like?
So for me,
She's in Singapore, by the way. We've gone international.
So I actually, like I have like a lot of different ideas of what I would like to do. But at the moment, I still see myself continuing with the private dinners and supper clubs for a while. But what I would eventually like to do is have more workshops where I'm teaching people, like, like I see like having like if possible, to have like a structure where I can bring more people in, where you're teaching people how to make plant-based foods. Because I think what a lot of people struggle with is, like, for someone who doesn't cook vegetarian food, it's very difficult to accept, like, like how can I only be cooking vegetarian food? And even though I've always been vegetarian, I really like understand what they're talking about, because if you're so used to like, cooking with meat or not cooking at all, then it's intimidating. And I feel like for me, like the goal would be like, how can I create a structure where I can involve more people to teach people how to make plant-based food and make it easy for them and make it more accessible and affordable for them. And because a lot of people also associate plant-based foods to be expensive, and of course, like, how can I work around all of these things to make it a more manageable lifestyle for someone, but teach someone how to do it themselves? So of course, I would love to create these experiences still, but how can you make it like so that someone can learn it themselves and incorporate it in their day-to-day life. So I feel like eventually I would love to have some kind of structure where I along with a group of maybe other, like, you know, a group of chefs can teach people how to make this kind of food and make it easy for them and not intimidating. So I think that's what the goal would be. Firstly, to answer your question, I feel like the specific playful games and stuff which you see here, that was with my collaboration with my friend. And I've already told her that I would like to bring some of these structures here to Dubai. And when she comes to Dubai, I want to do a pop-up with her again so people in Dubai can experience this. But in general, my food, in terms of the flavors and the way it is it has a playful take on like what you would traditionally expect to it. So that is for that question. And for the second question, for the supper club scene exploding, you're absolutely correct. It is definitely exploding. And I feel like there are more and more people coming onto this. There are more and more people starting supper clubs now. And I find that very exciting to see because like it's really great to see more and more people, like, you know, I feel like, you know, it's like a nice kind of, it's been a beautiful way to bring people together. And it's also like a very supportive community on its own. So it's really nice to see that for sure. Yeah, and you're right. So, yeah.
There's actually an actual platform now, right?
Yes. There's so many different, like I feel like even within the supper clubs, like people, like I've been to so many supper clubs myself, even though there aren't many people who do vegetarian or accommodate to vegetarian supper clubs. But it's been really great. Like I've also done like collaborations, like we did collaborate to raise like funds like for COVID in India. Like we did that this year. Like we had 4 different chefs working together and we took over a restaurant and we did a pop-up. So in that way, like everyone has really like come together and it's been great that way. Yeah. So to tell you my design process, the way I usually, when I'm planning a new menu, my first, like I'm a very visual person. So the way it goes for me is to take out a notebook and sketch my ideas of what I envision the menu to be, like through drawings. So for me, that's the way I start 100% always, is like pen to paper, 100%. So I'll give you an example of one of the dishes. 1 second. So literally, like I had left, like I was on a flight from Bangkok to Dubai, and I had just spent a whole week, a beautiful week in Bangkok, like eating lovely Thai food. And I was thinking on my flight, okay, I'm going back to Dubai, and I was thinking of a dessert in my head. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do on my next supper club as a dessert? And so I came up with this bottom picture, which you see with the gelato in the middle. So I was like, okay, I love sticky rice, mango, and I love another dessert called Tupten Crop. And so I was like, okay, I want to create both of these dishes. I want to create both of these dishes together. And so I ended up sketching while I was on the plane, like on a napkin, literally. I was like, okay, this is what I want, this is what I want. And I was like, when I go back to Dubai, I'll test it all out. But this is, I feel like I do this a lot on flights. Like I like to draw things out. So I ended up making a dessert where this is a pandan coconut gelato in the middle. And then it's submerged in pandan-infused coconut milk. And there's coconut lychee jelly cubes. Sorry. Yes, I don't mind. I would be very down for that. Bringing like these different things. Then we had like sticky rice, like balls inside, and we had Thai mango, and then I had like sago, and then I also had basil seeds because there's like an Indian drink. It's called faluda, and you have rose milk with basil seeds in it. I was like, you know what? I'm going to throw the basil seeds in there too. And so I made this whole dessert. And like first, like my mom was like, okay, what is this? Like, you know what? And then like I brought this to the supper clubs. And like the only thing is this is seasonal because I won't use a Thai mango when it's not in season. So I'm very particular about that. But so when the Thai mango season does come around, you guys can come and try this dessert. But so this is not, I wouldn't say this is a traditional Thai dish, but it was kind of like a like a hybrid of like the different Thai desserts I enjoy, and plus my own take on it as well. So that's how I came about the dish, was by literally I drew this out. And for me, drawing is how I think of my dishes primarily. And also, if you notice, like a lot of my food is very colorful. So whenever I plan the food, like I always plan also the colors and the different textures. So I try to have in every dish all the different textures going around, because you don't want something which is too soft and then too, like you want like someone to experience different flavors, different colors, different textures all in once. And that's what I feel like when people come for the plant-based things, they're like, oh, I never knew you can have this texture. I can't, like, so it's a bit like, it's different for them too. And also like through colors, it changes like the perception of, you look at a color of a dish and you think, you associate colors to certain things. So sometimes I make dishes so that, okay, you're comfortable. You're like, okay, this is green and I was expecting it to do. But then I might make something red and you might be expecting something completely different. So like that's how I incorporate like an element of surprise also in the dishes, by throwing you off with the colors sometimes. So I feel like it's nice to have like a mix of like different elements of surprise going on and also some familiarity at the same time. So it's like a play on both things, I would say. Yeah. I don't know if that. yeah. So, yeah. And also to answer your question about do I change the menu? Yes. So before COVID, every month was a new menu. So I would do the same menu for 1 month, and then the next month I would change the menu, and the next month. Recently, it's been more like I stopped doing supper clubs for a long time in COVID, and I was doing delivery menus, and that's how I changed. So now I do both supper clubs and delivery menus. So I do both of them at the same time. But I would like to go back to doing the new menu every month, because that's what spurs my creative process. And I love that change, and I love constantly changing things up. And people have been very open and looking forward to, and they come back for the new menu. So absolutely, yeah. So that's a really good question. We had, 1 second. So what we did basically, it was a one-off thing. So I was only in India for a certain time, and I wanted to do this collaboration with my friends. So we only had these specific dates to work in the venue, which the person was giving us the venue. So it was a one-off thing, but we already decided that we want to do many more together. It's obviously difficult because I don't live in India, she lives in India, and like we work very well together for like creating such an experience. So it's definitely, we are gonna create more together like this. And she's also open to coming to Dubai. So it's gonna be great if we can recreate this in Dubai as well. But the feedback part was very important. So what I was honestly very worried about how people would perceive this. First of all, coming to such a venue and then being split up like from your friends. Because I would say from my experience in India is like a lot of people like to be in their familiar friends group and they don't like to be split up from that. Versus here in Dubai, where I know, so I've been to supper clubs on my own. I've had people come to my supper clubs on their own. So it's like they're open to meeting new people and making new friends, and the context is very different. So in India, where this event happened, I was a bit worried, but I was like, it's okay. Like, you have people going around, you have the experience itself is, you're asking people to interact with one another. So I wasn't too worried about how it being awkward in any way or anything, because that's part of the whole experience, and the playfulness in the experience is that it would resolve this issue on its own. So that was there for sure. Of course, we had different feedback of how we could have set it up. So we had 7 different stations where some people might have gone for the main course first, someone had to go for dessert first, because it was a certain thing. So our goal would be to, how can we incorporate it so that, for me, it's totally okay to have dessert first and have main course in the end. I don't have a particular order, but I understand that, for some people, that might not be in their comfort zone. And also, for example, the popsicles, which you saw. Initially, we were like, oh my God, yes, this is so exciting. The popsicles are working. And by the end of the night, I went to the station where people were there, and the popsicles had melted and stuff like that. So there are a lot of things we did have to take into consideration of how can we improve the overall situation, given that India is extremely hot and like we had like all these different things to consider. But I always very, very open to feedback. And I think it's very important to listen to people, especially like food is a very subjective matter. So I always listen to people and hear what they have to say, for sure, yeah.
Just a quick question. Your friend's furniture shop.
Yes.
Did you stain anything? It's really bugging me. Did anything? Selling this stuff?
No. So actually, yes. So we literally placed our food, these melting popsicles on which are mulberry, which is like, no, but we didn't damage anything. Everything was okay. But of course, like we laid out things in a way like people were okay. Like we even had like a noodle bowl situation on the top floor, like where people having noodles and like soup and like. But luckily, nothing. It was okay. Like it was like I feel like the vessels which my friend designed was so friendly for people to walk around and not create like spillage or anything. So we actually didn't have that as an issue. So she was one of the collaborators, the owner of the furniture store. She was the one who allowed us to, take the venue and literally go into every nook and cranny of a furniture store and do whatever we wanted to do. But only in India. I don't think anyone in Dubai would allow that. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thanks.